Welcome to IIOCS.com Food Tech Club. Today's topic is food fortification. Let us quickly glance the basics of nutrition. Nutrition is the biochemical and physiological process by which an organism uses food to support its life. It includes ingestion, absorption, assimilation, biosynthesis, catabolism, and excretion. So basically, nutrition is the process by which body utilizes the food. The science that studies the physiological process of nutrition is called nutritional science. Then what is nutritional status of a person? Nutritional status is the condition of the body as a result of the intake, absorption and use of nutrition, as well as the influence of disease and related factors. Okay, this is about nutritional status. Then what happens if we don't meet the nutritional status, right? If we are not in the good nutritional status. So that is malnutrition. Malnutrition refers to deficiencies, excesses or imbalances in a person's intake of energy and other nutrients. Okay, so deficiency is undernutrition and excess is overnutrition. Okay, so deficiencies you have a lot, which we will discuss in the further slides. Excess, if you can take an example of overweight. Overweight, it is the excess of energy, right? Okay, so this excess is of nutrition is called as overnutrition. Micronutrient deficiencies are a major global public health problem that can affect all age groups in both industrialized and developing countries. So we have to mainly focus on the micronutrient deficiencies. Some 2 billion people, mainly women and children in developing countries, are reported to suffer from iron, iodine, vitamin A and zinc deficiencies. Such deficiencies lead to a range of disabilities including impaired brain development and cognition, impaired immunity against disease, poor pregnancy outcome, poor growth, impaired work capacity, blindness, and even death. Let us see more about the effect of malnutrition. Multiple micronutrient deficiencies often occur due to the regular consumption of plant-based diets that include little or no animal source of food. So basically for vegetarians, the deficiency of micronutrient is seen more. Okay, in vegetarians it is seen more. Even in non-vegetarians it is seen if the amount of micronutrients absorbed from the soil is low. Okay, so that is what said in the next point, that is in the case of iodine and selenium deficiencies, they are due to low levels of these micronutrients in soil, leading to low levels in plant and animal foods. These low micronutrient intakes, coupled with widespread infections, poor hygiene and poor sanitation in developing countries, lead to a variety of poor health outcomes. Such situation calls for the urgent action. The action we take is the fortification. Okay. Yeah, let us see about fortification. Yes, fortification is the practice of deliberately increasing the content of one or more micronutrient in a food or condiment to improve the nutritional quality of the food supply and provide a public health benefit with minimal risk to health. So in fortification, what do? We deliberately add the required nutrients to the food. Okay, that is called fortification. The vitamins and minerals used for fortification typically include vitamin A, D, folic acid, and other B complex vitamins, iodine, iron, and zinc. According to the World Bank, probably no other technology available today which offers a large opportunity to improve lives and accelerate development at such low cost and in such short a time. So fortification is the best method to fight against nutritional deficiencies. Okay, let us see about different approaches of fortification. Food fortification is governed by national regulations, whether it is mandatory or voluntary. So in let us see about mandatory approach. So this occurs when governments legally oblige food producers to fortify particular foods or categories of food with specified micronutrients, providing high certainty over time that will contain a predetermined amount. So for this you can take the example of fortified salt, iodine fortified salt. Okay, so that is uh, a mandatory food fortification. And the next one is voluntary fortification. So this occurs when a food manufacturer freely chooses to fortify particular foods in response to permission given in food law as a means to increase their brand value. Excuse me. Yeah. Globally, mandatory regulations are most often applied to the fortification of food with micronutrients such as iodine, iron, vitamin A, and folic acid. Of these, we all know that the iodization of salt is the most widely implemented globally. Let us see the organizations which give us the principles or guidelines for the food fortification. World Health Organization, then the Food and Agricultural Organization, and the Codex Alimentarius Commission developed the general principles for the addition of essential nutrients to food. So it is the WHO and then FAO and Codex Alimentarius. Okay, all these three organizations, basically it is the WHO and FAO. So Codex Alimentarius is a committee created by WHO and FAO. So it is basically by WHO and FAO which gives the guidelines for food fortification. Okay, the WHO recommends large scale food fortification as a powerful and cost effective intervention to fight vitamin and mineral deficiencies.
So the recommendations given by WHO are, they basically include universal salt iodization. So this is called as USI. Okay, universal salt iodization. Then fortification of maize, flour, cornmeal, wheat flour, and rice with vitamins and minerals. And also for children, uh, it is different. So it is basically the micronutrient powders containing iron for infants and young children between 6 to 23 months, or children between 2 to 12 years. The FDA currently endorses the addition of nutrients to food under four conditions. So let us see these four conditions. The first one is during nutritional deficiencies. So for example, we take salt iodization. Then when it is required to restore the nutrient losses. For example, so when you take out the husk of the paddy, you will lose many water soluble and the other minerals and vitamins in the outer coat of the paddy, right? So to recover all those nutrients, so we can use this condition, use in this condition, that is restoration of nutrient losses. Next one is improving the quality of replacement foods. Um, for example, if you take the non-veg replacement foods are there. So to improve the protein quality of the meat replacement foods, so you can fortify the food. Okay, then to balance the nutrient content in industrially fabricated foods that replace large proportions of the natural diet. So all ready to eat foods and all, so we have to make sure that it is nutritionally rich, so during for which we have to use fortification. Okay, so this fortification can be of different types and different approaches. So programs can be designed for mass fortification, or for targeted group fortification, or market driven fortification. Okay, let us see more about these three types and also other types. First one is mass fortification. Mass fortification refers to the addition of one or more micronutrients to staple foods or condiments that are widely consumed by a general population that has an unacceptable public health risk of being deficient in these micronutrients. So basically the mass fortification is to a particular population which lacks a particular common nutrient. Okay, floor fortification with iron and folic acid and salt iodization is a good example. Okay, so you can take the salt iodization example as a standard example for this, because salt is iodized all over the world, right? So this is a mass fortification. So this type of fortification is usually led by government, but may be voluntary or mandatory. Mass fortification can create the possibility of excess intake and the potential of negative health consequences if not well controlled. That is why it is mentioned voluntary and mandatory. So in some places it is not mandatory, it is voluntary. So that's why you can get separately as iodized salt and even non-iodized salts also, or unfortified salts also you can get. Okay, yeah. Next type is targeted fortification. Targeted fortification refers to fortified foods that are designed for and targeted at a specific population group. The population group is most often infants, young children, but any population group could be targeted, including adolescents, young women, pregnant women, or even food aid for displaced persons. Unlike mass fortification, the targeted fortified foods are rarely fortified with a single or even a small number of micronutrients. So it will contain combination of different nutrients which targets to a particular group of population. They are usually fortified with range of critical micronutrients for which the targeted population is at risk of deficiency. Industrially manufactured complementary foods for young children, often based on cereal with milk or legumes, and are the main targeted fortified food in this category. Okay, so industrial based foods, for example, you get many powders which to add to the milk for the infants or young children, so which is fortified with many nutrients like calcium, then DHA, etc., right? All these are targeted fortified groups. So such products like Bonvita and other milk powders, they are targeted to kids, especially to kids. Okay, these are the targeted fortified foods. The composition of manufactured complementary foods is recommended and regulated by government itself and international agencies so as to ensure that the child receives adequate nutrition in the period between breastfeeding and consuming the family diet. So note that this is also controlled by government and international agencies. Infant formulas, which may be needed to replace breast milk, are also strictly regulated in composition of micro and macronutrients and are formulated to cover all the nutrient requirements of the infant. Okay, next one is market driven fortification. Okay, in this one, market driven fortification refers to those manufactured foods which are fortified both for the marketing advantage of the company and for the benefit of the consumers. Okay, so this is targets basically targets the a particular group of consumers. Okay, all functional foods you get, fortified functional foods you get, come under market driven fortification. The food manufacturers use the nutritional benefit of the consumer as a marketing advantage while compiling uh, co- uh, compiling with government regulations in respect to the nature and quantity of the specific nutrient added. Okay, for example, you can get vitamin E enriched or a tocopherol enriched oils, right? So that targets a particular type of consumers. Okay, or fat reduced oils, okay, or saturated fat reduced oils. So these are fortified foods, so they target a particular group of population. The fortified foods are targeted at specific population groups. Breakfast cereals and chocolate drinks, drink powders, examples are etc., are targeted at children and adolescents. They are commonly fortified with a range of micronutrients at around 30% of the daily requirement, and when widely consumed can provide useful amounts of these micronutrients, often lacking in the diet. Okay, next one is about biofortification. This is also a type of fortification, an important type of fortification. In the voice ಸರಿ ಬರುಂತ ಚೆಕ್ Biofortification is the process by which the nutritional quality of food crops is improved through agronomic practices, conventional plant breeding, or modern biotechnology. So, what do we do in biofortification? So, we do this fortification in the plant itself, okay, from the origin itself. The main aim is to increase nutrient levels in crops during the plant growth itself, rather than through manual means during post harvest processing of the crops. A novel characteristic of biofortification may be its permanence in nutrient enrichment. Once a nutrient enriched staple crop has been bred, adapted, and grown in a region, the nutrient increment is, without continued plant breeding innovations, perpetual. Okay, so this means, so in this method, once you uh, grow a plant with a particular nutrient in high quantity or in the required quantity, then so this the genes of that particular nutrient will be uh, passed to the seeds, and you can grow the particular type of plant for many generations. You don't have to research and you don't have to add such nutrient always. Okay, once you grow such biofortified plants, you can grow it for several years. So some examples for biofortification projects are iron biofortification of rice, beans, sweet potato, cassava, and legumes. Then zinc biofortification of wheat, rice, beans, sweet potato, and maize. Then provitamin A carotenoid biofortification of sweet potato, maize, and cassava. Okay, let us see about the fortification vehicle. So, fortification vehicle is nothing but the carrier of the fortificant. Fortificant is the nutrient which we add. Okay, the carrier of the required nutrient we are trying to fortify. The selection of a suitable combination of food vehicle and fortificants, or more specifically, the chemical form of the micronutrients that will add to the chosen food vehicle, is fundamental to any food fortification program. So, the food vehicle which carries the nutrient and also the form of the micronutrient we are using. Okay, what kind of iron we are using, what kind of zinc, what form of zinc we are using. Okay, the form of micronutrient we are using plays a great role in food fortification. When selecting the most appropriate chemical form of a given micronutrient, the main considerations and concerns are the sensory problems. That is, whatever nutrient you add shouldn't change the sensory aspects of the food. That can be changed. Okay. Then the interaction of the nutrients added with the other food particles. Okay, that also matters. Then the bioavailability of the nutrients. Whatever nutrients we add, that should be bioavailable. Otherwise, our body will not utilize it, or our body will not absorb or digest it, right? Then it should be cost effective. It should be affordable. The last one and the important one, it should be in the safer level, or it should be safe enough to consume. Okay, these are the points which we should consider while selecting a particular fortificant, a particular nutrient. Okay, let us see about different fortificants and fortification vehicles. Yeah, the first one is iron. Iron used for fortification can be of three types. So, first one is water soluble, second one is poorly water soluble, and third one is water insoluble. Okay, yeah. Let us see about water soluble iron. The water soluble iron compounds have the highest relative bioavailability of all the iron fortificants. Okay, so however, these have adverse effects on the organoleptic qualities of food, in particularly the color and food. Even though the water soluble iron compounds are well absorbed in our body, but it will not have a good effect on the organoleptic qualities of the food. Okay, sometimes free iron produced from the degradation of iron compounds present in the food, they can oxidize other nutrients in the food also. Okay, the water soluble forms of iron are suited to fortifying cereal flours that have a relatively fast turnover. Okay, so the cereal flours which we consume regularly, which need not be stored for long time. Okay, which you consume within a month and you go and buy a new one. Okay, in such uh, cereal flours you can fortify with water soluble forms of iron. Water soluble iron compounds are also useful for dry foods such as pasta, milk powder, as well as dried milk based infant formulas. Encapsulated forms, that is, iron compounds that have been coated to physically separate the iron from the other food components, can be used for slowing down or preventing sensory changes. Okay, encapsulated forms are the ones which are coated with some material. If you can see here, the iron is inside here. Okay, and it is coated with a very less reactive compound or non-reactive compound, so that the iron does not react with the other components. The water soluble iron doesn't react with other components of the food. Ferrous sulfate is by far the most frequent used water soluble iron fortificant, principally because it is the cheapest. So among all the different forms of iron compounds, ferrous sulfate is the water soluble iron compound which is used as it is the cheapest one. Okay. Next one is poorly water soluble iron. Poorly water soluble iron compounds such as ferrous fumarate have the advantage of causing fewer sensory problems, unlike the water soluble ones in food, than the water soluble compounds. Ferrous fumarate and ferric saccharate are the most commonly used iron compounds in this group, and in adults we use ferrous sulfate. Okay, bioavailable ferrous sulfates. They are frequently used to fortify infant cereals, and the latter, that is the ferric saccharide, is used in chocolate drink powders, maize flour, and wheat flour. Ferrous fumarate can be used in an encapsulated form to limit the little sensory changes which they might cause in the food. Okay, these also can be encapsulated with a less reactive compound. Next one is water insoluble iron. The absorption of water insoluble iron ranges only from approximately 20% up to 70% as that of other two groups. That means the absorption of water insoluble iron is only around 20% to 75% when compared to the other two groups. Despite their reduced absorbability, water insoluble iron compounds have been widely used because they have far less effect on the sensory properties of food and also because of the cheaper price. Okay, so these water insoluble irons are uh, they are less absorbable in our body, but still they are more used because they don't cause much changes in the sensory properties of the food, and also they are cheaper when compared to the other two groups. However, their absorption is reduced by the inhibitors in the food also. If it is necessary to use a water insoluble iron fortificant, it should be ideally have an absorption equivalent to at least 50% that of the ferrous sulfate, the group 1, that is water soluble irons. Okay, at least 50% of the water soluble iron uh, uh, absorbability should be there in the water insoluble iron fortificant. Okay, within this category of iron fortificants, the ferric phosphate compounds such as ferric orthophosphate and ferric pyrophosphate are used to fortify rice and some infant cereals and chocolate containing foods. Elemental iron powders are used in a number of countries to fortify cereals. For liquid milk products, ferrous biglycinate, micronized ferric pyrophosphate, and ferric ammonium citrate are the most appropriate fortificants. Okay, let us see how can we improve the absorption of the iron, especially the water insoluble iron. The addition of ascorbic acid, that is vitamin C, or sodium ethylenamide, uh, yeah, ethylenamine tetraacetic acid, that is sodium EDTA. Sorry, yeah, ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, that is EDTA, sodium EDTA, and the removal of phytates, all of which reduce the effect of the inhibitors, can be effective ways of increasing the total amount of iron absorbed from iron fortified foods. So to increase the absorption of iron, what can we do? So we can add vitamin C or the sodium EDTA, sodium ethylene diamine uh, tetraacetic acid, and we have to remove the phytates, the inhibitors from the food. Okay, then only we can get the maximum absorption of iron. The co-addition of ascorbic acid in a 2:1 molar ratio is recommended in order to enhance iron absorption. Okay, in 2:1 ratio we have to add ascorbic acid is to iron in the food. This applies to infant foods and market driven foods. Okay, this is for infant foods and market driven foods. In the case of high phytic acid foods, the molar ratio should be 4:1. Okay, then ferric sodium EDTA is recommended for the mass fortification of high phytate cereal flours and for sauces with a high peptide content. So example, for fish sauce and soy sauce, we can use ferric sodium ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid. Okay, yeah. Next is about fortification of foods with vitamin A. Since vitamin A is a fat soluble vitamin, it is easily added to fat based or oily foods. When the food vehicle is either dry or a water based liquid, an encapsulated vitamin A is used. Based on this distinction, vitamin A fortificants can be divided into two categories, that is, oily forms that can be incorporated directly into fat based foods or emulsified into water based ones. The next form is dry forms that can be dry mixed into foods or dispersed in water depending on whether they are cold water dispersible or non cold water dispersible. So we have two kinds. So in first one is oily forms. So in oily forms, as vitamin A is oil soluble, it can easily get mixed. So in dry form, so you just mix the dry vitamin A fortificant with the food, or you disperse in the water. Okay. Yeah. Pure vitamin A and beta carotene in solution are unstable when exposed to ultraviolet light, oxygen, or air. Thus, all forms of vitamin A, that is oily or dried, are protected with antioxidants. That means if you are fortifying a particular food with vitamin A, you have to add antioxidants in order to avoid the loss of vitamin A by ultraviolet light, oxygen, or air. Okay, it is required to add an antioxidant. The use of airtight packaging provides further protection of vitamin A. A variety of oily and dry forms of the retinol esters. So, retinol esters is one more type, a compound or the precursor of vitamin A. Okay, retinol esters, retinyl acetate, and retinyl palmitate are available for food fortification purposes. The dry forms are usually gelatin starch or gum coated, and all forms contain antioxidants. So these dry forms of vitamin A, so these gelatin starch or gum coated uh, vitamin A, they are associated with antioxidants also. They are fortified along with antioxidants. Absorption of all forms is good, around 90%. All forms of vitamin A, that is in the form of beta carotene or in the form of retinols. Okay, all forms of retinols. But losses of vitamin A during processing, storage, and food preparation may be high. Vitamin A fortification of margarine and sugar has been shown to be efficacious. Then vegetable oils and cereal flours are also considered to be useful fortification vehicles. Adverse health effects have been associated with acute and chronic high intakes of retinol, mainly through supplementation, but not with high intakes of provitamin A, that is carotenoids. Okay, so high intake of retinol is not good. And also, so we saw about the foods which are usually fortified with vitamin A, that is margarine, sugar, vegetable oils, and cereal flours. Yeah. Next one is about fortification of food with iodine. So you must be knowing that there are two forms of iodine, chemical forms of iodine, that is iodate and iodide. They are usually added as the potassium salt, but sometimes they can also be added as calcium or sodium salt. So the potassium salts are more often used. Iodates are less soluble in water than iodides, more resistant to oxidation and evaporation, and being more stable under adverse climatic conditions. They do not require the co-addition of stabilizers. Okay, so the iodates are more stable than iodides. Potassium iodate is preferred to potassium iodide for salt iodization because it is more stable. So, for salt iodization, which one do we prefer? We prefer potassium iodate. Salt is the most widely used food. Excuse me. Yeah. Salt is the most widely used food vehicle for iodine fortification. Indeed, universal salt iodization, that is USI, is a strategy recommended by World Health Organization for the control of iodine deficiency disorder. The choice of this strategy is based on the following factors. So, why do we choose salt as the vehicle for iodine fortification? So let us see the reasons. Salt is one of the few commodities consumed by everyone. Okay, salt is universal, it is consumed by everyone. Salt consumption is fairly stable throughout the year. So the consumption of salt is fairly stable. Okay, throughout the year everybody will consume. Salt production is usually limited to a few geographical areas. Salt iodization technology is easy to implement and available at reasonable cost throughout the developing world. The addition of iodine to salt does not affect its color, taste, or odor. Right? Salt remains same color, remains white in color even after addition of iodine. Even the taste and odor does not change. The quality of iodized salt can be monitored at the production, retail, and household levels also. For these reasons, we select salt as the vehicle for iodine fortification. Okay, so also the amount of salt we consume, so we can control, right? We can't consume more salt also. If the food is more salt, we can't consume it. So that is also one reason that we can have controlled amount of iodine in our diet through salt. Iodine is usually added to salt after the salt has been refined and dried by one or two main techniques. So let us see the techniques of adding iodine to the salt. So there are two methods, that is wet method and dry method. In wet method, a solution of potassium iodate is either dripped or sprayed at a uniform rate onto salt, passing by on a conveyor belt. Okay, in dry method, it involves the sprinkling of potassium iodide powder or potassium iodate over the dry salt. Okay, in wet method we use the water, and dry method we directly sprinkle the iodide powder. The technique requires a salt, so the dry method requires a salt made of small homogeneous crystals, and the thorough mixing of the salt after addition of the iodine compound to ensure an even distribution of iodine is required. Okay, so thorough mixing of iodine is required to ensure that the iodine is evenly distributed in the dry method. Okay, let us see the stability of iodine. The stability of iodine in salt depends on the water content, acidity, and purity of the salt to which it is added. In order to reduce iodine losses during storage, the iodized salt must be as pure and as dry as possible, and it must be appropriately packed. Iodine tends to migrate from the top to the bottom of a container when the water content is too high in the container. It will evaporate if the acidity is too high also. Okay, this is about the stability of iodine. Okay, so let us see about some more fortificants. So we'll be seeing about zinc, fortification of zinc, folate and other vitamin B complex, then vitamin C, vitamin D, and calcium. First one is zinc. Zinc compounds that are suitable for use as food fortificants are zinc sulfate, zinc chloride, gluconate, oxide, and the stearate. Zinc absorption from food is dependent on the amount of zinc consumed and the ratio of phytate to zinc in the meal being consumed. So here also we have the inhibitor phytate. Okay. The addition of ferric sodium EDTA as a fortificant can increase zinc absorption from the diet. Okay, in order to ensure that zinc is absorbed properly, the ferric sodium EDTA helps a bit. Okay, zinc is generally confined to infant formula milks uh, with zinc sulfate, then complementary foods and ready to eat breakfast cereals, wheat noodles, and cereal flours. So, all these foods are fortified with zinc. Okay, next one is folate and other B vitamin fortification. Members of the group of B vitamins include vitamin B9, that is folic acid, B1, thiamine, B2, riboflavin, then niacin, then pyridoxine, and cobalamin. In general, the B vitamin are relatively stable, with thiamine being the most labile to heat, and synthetic folate, that is folic acid, is moderately heat stable, but is this folic acid is susceptible to the effects of oxidizing and reducing agents in the food. There is a long history of experience of adding B vitamins to cereals and C. Ascorbic acid and ascorbyl palmitate are often added to oils, fats, soft drinks, and various other foods as a way of improving the stability of other added micronutrients. Okay, so this what is this? Vitamin C is basically added to stabilize the other micronutrients we have already seen in iron section, right? So that's also it is given as an iron absorption enhancer, so it is added as an iron absorption enhancer. However, ascorbic acid is itself relatively unstable in the presence of oxygen, metals, humidity, and high temperatures also. To retain vitamin C integrity, especially during the storage period, foods must therefore be appropriately packed or the ascorbic acid should be encapsulated. Okay, we have to make sure that the food is packed properly to ensure that there is no entry of oxygen or there is no high temperature uh, in the packaging material. The package has to be proper. Okay, and also if the packaging cannot avoid the entry of oxygen and other things, so we can encapsulate the ascorbic acid just like how we did in iron. The addition of vitamin C to commercially processed foods such as dry milk, infant formulas, cereal based complementary foods, chocolate drink powders, and beverages have been found to be successful in increasing intakes of vitamin C. Okay, next is about vitamin D. Either vitamin D2, that is ergocalciferol, or D3 cholecalciferol can be added to foods. So we know that there are two types of vitamin, that is vitamin D2 and vitamin D3. So they both can be added to foods. The two forms have similar biological activities and both are very sensitive to oxygen and moisture, and both interact with minerals. A dry, stabilized form of vitamin D, which contains an antioxidant, so which is usually tocopherol or vitamin E, that protects activity even in the presence of minerals, is generally used for most commercial applications. So in commercial applications we use the dry stabilized form of vitamin D in association with the antioxidant tocopherol. Okay, so the common foods which are fortified with vitamin D are milk and other dairy products like dried milk powder, evaporated milk or yogurt, etc. Okay, next is fortification of calcium. A heightened awareness of the need to increase intakes of calcium for osteoporosis prevention has meant that calcium fortification has attracted a good deal of interest in recent years. The bioavailability forms of calcium include, so there are various forms of calcium, even in iron and there are various forms, so we came across that. So in calcium it can be calcium carbonate, chloride, citrate malate, gluconate, glycerol phosphate, lactate, mono or di or tribasic phosphates, orthophosphate, and uh, the oxides and hydroxides. Okay, these are the forms of calcium. There is little reason to believe that low solubility is a major constraint to the bioavailability of the fortificant calcium. Okay, so the calcium is not a good soluble compound. So therefore, the absorbability of calcium in the body is also less. The absorption of added calcium ranges from 10 to 30%. However, high levels of calcium inhibits the absorption of iron from foods. Okay, if calcium is taken in high amount, then it will inhibit the absorption of iron. So therefore, we have to make sure that proper amount of calcium is added to the food, or it is fortified to the food. So the common foods which are fortified with calcium are milk, yogurt, cottage cheese, even some cereal flours are fortified with calcium. Okay, so that's all about different fortificants. Okay, and their stability, everything we studied. So in general, we'll look at the stability of different nutrients. Okay, the factors which affects the stability of the nutrients. The stability of nutrients is affected by many chemical and physical factors. Consequently, processing parameters must be selected and controlled during the processing of fortified food to minimize nutrient loss. In this picture, you can see that there are various factors which affect the stability of nutrients, that is temperature, then water, then pH, oxygen, light, catalysts or inhibitors or oxidizing and reducing agents, other nutrients, metallic ions like iron and copper, then time of storage. Okay, how long they are stored without being used. These are the factors which affect the nutrient stability. So let us see the effect of one of the factors, that is high temperature treatment. So this is the main factor, and the common factor in the processed or cooked foods. Okay, that is why this factor is being highlighted. So let us see the effect of high temperature to the stability of nutrients. Many vitamins and other supplements can degrade faster and lose effectiveness when exposed to excessive heat. Therefore, high temperature treatments is not suitable for the heat sensitive nutrients. Processes like drying, extrusion, pasteurization use high temperature treatment. So, to minimize nutrient losses during this high temperature treatment, what we can you do is, so we can use um, the combination, like lower combination of time and temperature. Okay, so wherein we can vary the temperature, we can reduce the temperature and increase the time of treatment, or vice versa, we can increase the temperature and reduce the time of treatment. Okay, so that the exposure of the nutrient to the particular temperature is reduced. Okay, so this can be achieved by either increasing the surface area or reducing the pressure during the drying process. The combination of high temperature and short time also maximizes nutrient retention. Okay, so this point I think I didn't explain. So, we can achieve this minimal nutrient loss by increasing the surface area. So if we increase the surface area during drying, what happens? So if we increase the surface area, then the drying rate the is increased, right? The drying happens faster. So we don't have to expose the food to high temperatures for long time, right? So that way we can avoid the loss of micronutrients to some extent. Okay, so this is all about the food fortification. Thank you. Goodbye for today. Continue studying with IIOC's food tech. If you have any query, you can contact the number on the screen. Thank you.